Have you seen those images where when you look at it initially, you see one image, and maybe if you study it long enough or somebody points it out to you, you can see something totally different in that image. You change your perspective and you see something different. Life is that way. Sometimes we just need to change our perspective. We need to change the way that we look at the situations that we're facing, and we need to realize maybe this isn't so bad after all. Maybe I can get through this and I can endure this change. Sure, it's difficult, but changing my perspective, instead of looking at the negative that I'm dealing with right now in this moment, I can see how I'm going to be a better person through this change, how I'll be stronger, how I will have more endurance. We're going to be in the book of James today, in the first chapter. If you haven't already, go grab your Bible and turn to the book of James. And let's start talking about change. I know if you're anything like I am, we all have areas in our life that we could use a change of perspective. For you, maybe it's school. Maybe your grade in that one class is pretty low, and you need to make some change in your study habits to bring that grade back up. And I know right now, especially during this time of this virus, things are all kinds of crazy. But you know that you need to put in some more work, put in some more effort to do better in this class. Maybe it's going to require less time playing video games. And you know that if you take away your video game time, you're also going to miss spending time with those friends that you're playing those games with. And so it's hard to commit to make that change, to make your grade be better. Or maybe you need to get more serious about practice. Maybe it's sport that you play, soccer or basketball or baseball or softball or football or whatever those things that you need to be better about practicing at. Or maybe you're in the band and you need to be practicing your instrument to be better at your instrument. Maybe it's debate club, or maybe it's theater and you need to work on rehearsing and practicing to being better. Right now, you're just kind of coasting. And so there's some work I could put into this that would really take me to the next level. But it's going to require a change. Maybe it's something a little bit more real for you. Maybe there's a friend in your life that you know they're not the best influence. They're not the best person for you to be hanging out with or spending your time with. But you've known this person for so long. You've known them since preschool. And they've been your friend for all of this time, but you know that they've chosen a different direction in their life, and so maybe it's time to part ways, but doing that affects the dynamics of your other relationships, because now you're not wanting to spend time with this one person. And so there's this change in dynamics, change in your friends group, and it's difficult to make that change. Maybe it's a change in the words that you use when you talk to others. You're always the funny one in class, maybe. You're always the class clown, the one with the quickest, wittiest remarks coming back to the teacher. But you're also the one who can hurt somebody with your words the fastest and the easiest. And while you're getting these laughs, you're getting noticed, you begin to think, this isn't really what I want to be known for. We all have something in our lives that needs to change. But no matter the issue, no matter the change, there's a common thread running through each of these things that we deal with and that we struggle with. When it comes to making a change, It's easy to see that we need to do something, but it's really difficult to actually do what needs to be done. Why is that? If we know we need to make a change that's for the good, if we know it's going to benefit not only me but other people as well, then why can't we just do it? Well, I think there's a few reasons that we find this to be so challenging. I think first of all, it's because we're afraid to fail. This is a universal fear, something that we all have. No one ever wants to fail, and if the past is any kind of indicator in our lives, we're going to fail. I think also a fear that we have is that we're going to stand out. For some of us, it's easy to just roll with that B average. To think that, it's okay to be second chair, or it's okay to be the backup. It's okay to be the understudy instead of the lead actor. We want to care, but just not too much. We like attention, but not necessarily the wrong kind of attention. We don't want to be seen as someone who tries too hard, so we don't draw attention to ourselves. I think third, we don't want to seem judgmental, right? If we start changing certain behaviors that we have, then we're worried that people think we're too good for them because we've changed and they haven't. Let's say your group of friends talks a certain way about other people, especially people of the other gender. You decide, I don't feel comfortable talking that way about them anymore, and so I can't participate in those kinds of discussions. But if you change this, if you decide you don't want to be a part of this any longer, then you risk looking weird. You risk looking judgmental. And there's also a chance that they don't think that they can be themselves around you anymore. And so maybe they just won't be around you anymore. And we feel like there's really no way to win in this situation. We don't want to lose our friends over that. I think the fourth reason is that we don't attempt change because change just seems overwhelming, doesn't it? It seems like a lot, and we're not sure that we can handle it. Between school, between homework, between cheerleading practice, between athletics practice or band practice or theater rehearsal or all these other things, and then you maybe have a part-time job on the side, anything additional to that seems exhausting to even think about. Working on something to make your life better just seems like a whole lot of trouble right now. Now that I've thoroughly depressed you all talking about this, I actually have some really good news to share with you. Making a change is possible, and it can benefit you even beyond the actual change itself. It can do so much more for you. Today, I want us to look at a passage of Scripture that comes from a letter written by James. James was the half-brother of Jesus. James, though, didn't always believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And if we're being fair and to James and honest with ourselves, that would be a hard thing to believe when you've grown up with this guy all your life. Maybe you shared a bedroom with him as a kid and you think, there's no way this guy is the Son of God. It's hard to believe. But after Jesus died on the cross and then resurrected back to life, James began to believe that Jesus really was the Son of God. James would soon become a very prominent leader in the early group of Jesus' followers there. But before we get to what James said in his letter, let me give a little bit of background. It was during one of the last talks that Jesus had with his disciples. And he's telling them they're going to be his witnesses in their hometown and beyond. He was telling them they are going to take the message of grace that he's given them, the message of the cross, the message of forgiveness and the gospel to the very ends of the earth. They're going to spread that and share that everywhere that they go. And so Jesus tells his disciples there's going to be the need for them to make a change. They're going to have to move beyond their comfort zones and go out into the world. This was a big vision, a vision that really had the opportunity to make a huge impact. But at first, that didn't happen. You see, Jesus' followers were on board with the gospel. They believed the gospel. They understood and knew the gospel to be true. But the idea of taking that message and sharing it with the entire world, that's intimidating for anybody. So most of these guys, they stayed right where they were for the time being. But then something changed. It didn't take long before the early Christians began to be persecuted. People began to seek them out, to kill them, to mistreat them, to put them in prison. And so, at this crackdown of the church, when things began to get really tight, these Christians, these followers of Christ, began to scatter. They were leaving their city and their homes and going to faraway places, and this is exactly what Jesus had told them to do in the first place. This dramatic change in their lives then propelled them. They were going out and they were sharing this gospel with all of the world, everywhere that they went. They were going to new places. They were growing in their faith and they were growing in their dependence upon God. And this is what's taking place when James is writing this letter. He's writing this letter then to these people who had been Jews and were now Christians and are taking this gospel and sharing it not only with Jews but with the Gentiles as well and with everywhere that they go. And as they're struggling with this persecution, as they're struggling with meeting of new trials and new things going on in their lives, James writes here in the very beginning of his letter, in James chapter 1 and verse 2, he tells them, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds." Hold on just a minute. Consider it pure joy when you experience trouble? That sounds crazy, even ridiculous. Because this isn't just any kind of trouble that they're dealing with. This is the kind of trouble that could lead to their death. And James is saying, count it joy? But James isn't finished with what he's saying. So check out what he says next. He says, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." Now, steadfastness isn't necessarily a word that we're just really familiar with today. It's not a word that we use very often, but think of the idea, the word of endurance. You know what endurance is. We usually associate the word endurance with athletics, with something that we train hard and we have to push past our limits. We have to increase our endurance. Over time, our bodies acclimate and they begin to be able to meet these new limits. You may struggle with weightlifting to be able to bench press a certain amount of weight, and so you continue lifting this certain amount of weight, and as you do each time it gets a little bit easier and you begin to increase the amount of weight and you're building up your endurance that pushes you past what you were able to before, and you become even stronger. And so James's words here mean endurance isn't just for the gym. Endurance is for every area of our life. When we push past the pain and we push past that struggle of any kind, including the struggle to change, then we don't just become better at that specific thing. We develop personal endurance. We develop an inner strength that helps us in other areas and in other challenges, that helps make us stronger. And so James then continues in verse 4 to say, "And let steadfastness or endurance have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Essentially, James is saying practice makes perfect. In other words, pushing through the pain, pushing through the difficult things, the hard stuff, doesn't just make you better at what you're working on, but you're actually learning how to change. It's like you're developing this muscle of endurance, this muscle that will help you to be able to face any and every kind of change. And when you have this perspective, every change that you face is simply another opportunity to grow. Not just personally, but spiritually as well. When it comes to change, our tendency is often to focus on all the negative. You know, with exercise and with lifting weights, we focus on the pain that we're going to have to go through, instead of looking at the fact that, you know, when I finish this, when I go through this, I'll be even stronger and even more able to endure more. We focus on the trouble that comes with these trials. We focus on the negative that comes through this change. But when we see change as something that has a trickle-down effect into the rest and other areas of our life, then we see it's more about becoming better than it is about becoming uncomfortable. And so when we view change this way, the way that God does, we recognize that it's all about growth. It's about a positive thing, because it's all about growing as a person, growing as a friend, as a daughter or son, as a parent, as a grandparent, growing as a human being. It's about getting stronger and tougher. And it's about developing better character. So I realize this idea doesn't get everyone excited about tackling goals or improving our grades and exercising. But like I've already said, it's a tough sell for all of us. But I think it probably felt that same way for the readers of the book of James when he first wrote this letter. These people are trying to keep from being murdered for their faith. And here James is telling these people, when we trust who God is, and we trust what God is like, we can be sure that God is doing something in us, no matter how uncomfortable that change may be. So whatever we have to do to endure and persevere through the change, it's worth it. Because there's a bigger picture that God is painting for us. And this is so important for us to get, and especially for you as a young person to understand this. Because even though change isn't absolutely and completely challenging today, even though you may feel like it is, it only grows to be more challenging as you grow older. Life doesn't get simpler as you move on to other stages. Life actually begins to get more complex. You see, you're going to one day exchange schoolwork for a career. Maybe you'll exchange dating for a marriage. You might exchange the family that you have now for your own family one day. And the strength that you develop right now is going to be the strength that helps you to endure and to carry on into the future as you meet new challenges. So when you pursue endurance in the face of change now, you'll be better prepared for even bigger challenges in the future. And ultimately, developing personal endurance helps to build and to deepen your faith in God. I want to encourage you to change the way you see change. Here's what I ask you to do this week. Change your perspective on the things that are in front of you. The thing that you know you need to change, see it as an opportunity to grow your faith, to grow your endurance, and to grow your character. Instead of saying, I'm working hard to change this one thing, say, I'm working hard to become a person who changes things. Maybe even tell some of the people in your life. Tell some friends. Tell your parents. Tell somebody. I'm trying to make this change in my life because I want to be a better person. I want to be a person who changes things. Ask them if they would to encourage you to be better at making this change and more able to make this change. It's powerful to have people in our life who give us the encouragement and the perspective that we need to help us through. Invite others to be a part of this change in your life. You'll be amazed at how much this can change and speed up the process of making that change. You may encounter someone who says, I made that same change and it made my life so much better. Now there may be some that say, it's not worth it. But I think you'll find more that say, I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to encourage you. I'm willing to share with you to get through this change. As we wrap up today, I want to encourage you. Pick one area of your life where something needs to change. And change the way that you see that. Decide you'll at least begin to think about it differently. Decide to think of it not as changing what you do, but working on who you are. And trust that God will help you through. And as you do this, you may just find the part of your life that feels impossible to change is actually subject to change. Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed the study on the subject of change. I know it's been a difficult one, especially just dealing with change is always hard, as we've talked about. I've enjoyed studying through this and sharing what I've learned with you. I hope that you've taken the time to watch these videos and to study through these passages that we've looked at as well. If you haven't, I encourage you to go back and look at those and share those with people who may be going through some difficult change in their life as well. Look forward to studying again with you this next week. Hopefully we'll be back soon to a normal time of being here in the room together and being able to share and discuss these things in real time instead of having to video these and then share these with you and not being able to get some real discussion going back and forth between us. Sure miss seeing you guys. Miss seeing you in the youth group, and those who aren't in the youth group who are, I hope you're watching this as well and know that I miss you all just as much. Loved being able to see a few of you this week as you've come to the building to help us with some different parts, different things that we've needed. Hope to be able to see you all again real soon. Be encouraged that we're making it through this and that this isn't permanent, and we will come through and we'll be stronger and more able to endure the changes that we'll face in life. Love you all. Sure miss you. Hope to see you again real soon. Bye-bye.